This area in particular is really nostalgic for me. Like, I played this level so many times as a kid. Alright, here's the infamous sock suit that I don't know if people really like that much. These assets look pretty good. From far away, this is like Batman Arkham Asylum level. Like, this is just so cool to me. I don't know. This level is so good. This is easily the best level in the game.
Okay, so I want to preface by saying I probably took this concept a little too far. In future episodes, I don't know if I'm gonna go this deep into it. I guess if this is like a monthly thing, then I might be able to, keep this kind of level of quality, or at least, I'm not saying this is like quality, but it did take me many hours to do. I don't know if you should expect this in the future, but this is kind of what I did. So based on the concepts, I kind of picked the major subject matter that I wanted to focus on, and I just started modeling in Blender. I just started kind of making a line of objects. So what I'm doing here is that I'm only making unique objects, and I'm kind of picking and choosing which objects are going to be copy and pasted, which ones are like the full thing. So you'll see that like the glass part of the tower, I kind of just make one giant object, while some other objects like the spikes are going to be copy and pasted. The reason I do that is case by case. Like, it just making the glass, like the glass isn't going to be copy and pasted that much. It doesn't really matter. It's going to be one texture, so I'm just going to make it one full object. It won't even be hard to UV. But when it comes to more complicated objects like those spikes, I don't want to make multiple spikes when I could just copy and paste the one spike I make. I think if you want to be a bit more professional about this, you would make a sheet basically listing out every single object that you need and figure out which ones can be copy and pasted and stuff. I'm just kind of winging it here because this is just a video, so sort of did it as I went and kind of figured out which objects I would need. So I knew I'm going to need like an arch, I'm going to need a column, I'm going to need like a column base, a column top, I'm gonna need like a railing that I can copy and paste, I'm gonna need the spikes, I'm gonna need different pipes that I can kind of connect together in unique ways and make them not look as copy and pasted. I'm gonna need that little like pressure sensor on the side. I've been using Maya a lot recently, so getting back into Blender has been a little bit rough. Something I actually really love about Blender is its proportional editing, which helps make natural objects like, rocks, leaves, plants, just things that need to be a bit more curved and kind of like random, have lots of like naturalistic features to them. It's really easy. This proportional editing, basically whatever you're selecting, like a face, vertex, or edge, it kind of creates like a bubble around it, and there's like a fall off of like the strength. And so as you move that edges that you're not even selecting will start to move, and how much they move is dependent on how far away they are from like the thing that you're selecting. And you can kind of increase it and decrease that sphere of influence by scrolling with the mouse wheel, and it's super helpful. For the vine wrapping around, I use something that I discovered recently. So you just convert a set of lines. So all you do is like get a vertex, extrude it out into a line, just keep extruding this line into this shape. So then I just convert those lines into a curve, which is not actual like mesh geometry. It's just straight up like lines, which can then be projected into a cylindrical tube. So it's projecting this cylinder around wherever the line is. Of course, this is just kind of an illusion, so you can't actually edit this. So you need to convert it back into a real mesh, which means it's made out of like polygons, like triangles. It's not amazing. I'm really rushing this process, so you can see how bad the geometry looks on the vine whenever I'm remeshing it. But I'm not too worried about it, and I kind of just smoothed it out. So I just told the normals to make everything look smooth, even though like if you make all the faces flat, you can tell like this geometry is like messed up, like this is bad. But it's just a video, and I'm just gonna have Blender like auto UV it, so it doesn't really matter. For the leaves and flowers that needed to be like copy and pasted a million times, instead of just doing it by hand, I'm just going to turn them into particles where they can be placed randomly on top of a dummy mesh, which is kind of just like a flattened sphere I made. I then UV'd most of the objects manually, like all of the architecture, I UV'd a lot of it manually. So all of this geometry is made up of either quads or triangles, and these are flat shapes, of course, so you could flatten them down onto a 2D UV map, which is then used to tell the textures, like where should I put the texture onto this mesh, which is a 3D object. It's kind of like the way we have our world map. We have flattened the globe, which is a 3D sphere, and we've flattened it onto a 2D plane. But obviously, as everyone knows, it's not perfect, and that globe map is like really warped. So, you know, the United States looks way bigger than it actually is on a flat map compared to the 3D sphere. So that's kind of the same thing, except the world map, we only want one seam on it. We only want to cut it one way so that we can kind of, because you don't want, like, you want the relationship between the countries to make sense. But here, it doesn't matter. You want to cut it up a good bit so that when it flattens onto a 2D plane, it's not warping it. Because if you do your UVs wrong, and if you don't do the right edge loops and you flatten that onto a 2D plane, it's going to get super squashed and messed up. And when you put a texture on it, it's going to look blurry and stretched and nasty. Now, this is kind of where the hard part comes in. The actual modeling itself is not that difficult, actually. This is probably the more difficult part, in my personal opinion. It is the actual texturing, like, material process. So I'm going to bring all of these models into Substance Painter where I'm going to texture it. But the kind of method I'm going with is I want to split up all of these objects into separate materials. So I'm putting that material onto the different faces of the object. So this part of the object will be concrete, and then I have this part of the object will be steel, so I give them a different material. And you can put multiple materials onto one mesh. It doesn't have to have one material. Now, the problem with this method that I've discovered, and this would work very well in Maya because it's not actually creating separate materials, it's actually just painting a different color on the same material. But in Blender, these literally are separate materials. So the problem with this is that every face that has the same color needs to be on the same UV map, and they cannot be overlapping. So what I had to do is I had to, like, select all of the faces from all these different objects that had the same color / material, and then I had to UV map and basically put them all into one UV map. That can get really complicated quickly. It's probably best to keep your object on one UV map and just color parts of the mesh instead of giving them separate colored materials. This probably makes zero sense. It's honestly something you'd have to kind of discover if you're like actually into modeling and know Substance. But yeah, this kind of process I've learned is not amazing, because when I took it into Substance, it wasn't amazing. I had to, like, go back into Blender and UV things over and over again. So I don't want to go into too much detail about what Substance is, but it's a great way to texture objects since it bakes these textures in world space and allows you to add effects and paint onto the model itself. It's just a great way to take it out of the program. Like, Blender, texturing in Blender is, without plugins, it's horrible. You might as well not do it. That's why Substance is just amazing for doing that. So as I said, when baking these UVs, they can't be overlapping. So every material, all the UVs associated with that material, they have to be not overlapping. Like, they have to be spread out a certain distance from each other. All these shapes on this flat image need to be spread out. They can't be, like, over top of each other because it's gonna draw over it. And so when I was baking, I could, like, easily tell, like, this is wrong. Like, there's just random lines and stuff. So I had to go back in Blender multiple times to do all this stuff. Now, after I actually fixed this, and I think I learned a lesson, I'm not gonna do that process anymore. But I did have some fun actually putting the materials on. A lot of these, pretty much most of these, are free materials inside of Substance Painter. They have, like, these smart materials that'll do a lot of really cool things. So there'll be, like, a rusted metal material that when you put it on, it'll automatically, like, color the edges of the mesh a different color, which if you were doing that manually, just like by hand drawing onto the texture, would take quite a while. You would have to know exactly where these are, or you'd have to, like, paint onto the mesh in 3D space. But here it just does it automatically for you, and you can, like, change the values and stuff. There's a ton of smart materials that do a ton of different things, and you can create your own and do all this stuff, which is something I want to do in the future. But for this project, I'm not going to create every single material by scratch. I just kind of added materials, changed some of their colors, just manipulated their base materials, and I did add a tile. So I made a tile texture inside of Photoshop, and I did this because that tile texture from Green Fingers is, I feel like, one of the more standout textures in that level, so I really wanted to put it inside of here. To combine all of these objects together, we're not going to use like Blender and stuff. We're actually just going to take it out of Blender and Substance, and we want to put it inside of a totally different area where we don't have to worry about like textures getting messed up or duplicates and stuff. We're going to be putting this inside of Unreal Engine 5. It's really easy to make like renders, and like the graphics look great, and Unreal 5 has like ray tracing and stuff. So it's just super easy to make them look good, and it's just a great way to get it out of Blender. So first I had to actually like recreate a lot of the materials again inside of Unreal Engine, because materials don't always like convert properly. And so I just kind of recreated them with the textures and like corrected the smoothness and roughness values on some of them. Some of them looked just fine by default. So yeah, I created all the materials, and then I made prefabs. So some of these objects you're going to tell are like copy and pasted. Like I said, I'm not going to model everything from scratch. I'm just going to make the unique version of something, and then I'm just going to copy and paste it over and over again. Now, some of these objects are like combined together. Like the lamp, for instance, is like the lamp model, and then I have like a light attached to it. And there'll be other objects like these walls and stuff that are like, this is a column and an arch and a wall attached to each other. And instead of just like shift selecting them and copying and pasting them, I put them inside of something called a blueprint, which is basically just a prefab. It's a great way to combine all of these objects into one object so that you can copy and paste it very easily without having just a bunch of different objects that are constantly being copy and pasted. You can just edit the prefab itself, and it'll apply those changes to everything in the level. So if I change the light value of the lamp prefab, it'll change all the light values of all the lamps in that level. I spent a lot of time on the lighting and post-processing, which is one of my favorite things to do inside of games, which honestly took a lot longer than expected. Unreal can be pretty annoying sometimes. They have this like automatic sun, and when it comes to ray tracing, which I kept on for this video, I thought it would look good, there's like this auto exposure that is just horrible, so I had to turn it off, because if you looked away, the screen would just turn black. So yeah, that kind of took a while to kind of deal with the Unreal issues. It's honestly not my favorite engine in the world, because it's so complicated, it's so overcomplicated, but it does look amazing. It's probably the best free engine you can get when it comes to visuals, at least. I also decided to add a big moon in the background to kind of reflect the game. You know, Arkham, every Batman game just has a giant freaking moon in the background. Lego Batman is not an exception. Now, I wanted to add a final touch to this. To really represent Lego Batman 1, I wanted to add in some Lego objects. So I've been hearing about this program where you can make Lego objects yourself from all the different pieces, and I've been interested in a while, so I thought this would be a great excuse to actually check it out. So it's called Mecha Bricks. I used it for the first time. Finding each type of Lego piece, especially since I'm not like a huge Lego person, like I don't have many Lego sets. I just have one Lego set right now, and it was given to me for my birthday. So like literally I don't know every Lego piece. I kind of just know some of the pieces based off the games. It was hard to find the stud. Like I thought it would just be called stud. It's not. It's like a 1x1 base plate circular type. It's not called a stud. It took a while to find a lot of these objects. There were some objects, like I tried making a tub from Green Fingers, and I just could not find the tub. So some objects I just couldn't make. But I think this is my favorite thing I made. I even made the mini kit from the first Lego Batman game. It doesn't have the logo, but I did make it, I think, pretty much exactly like the mini kit from the game. I did also make like some vines, some plants and stuff, and they're not 100% exact. I could have done that, but I thought I had some like better ideas actually. To actually get this into Unreal Engine, it's a little bit of a process. I was a little bit confused. You can't convert it straight to Unreal Engine, so I forgot the name of the type that it exports as, but Blender actually supports the type that you export. So I took it into Blender and then I had to convert it into an FBX because FBXs are the only thing that Unreal accepts, I'm pretty sure. I think it might accept an OBJ, but I can't remember. So yeah, I converted to FBX, put it into Unreal Engine, and just like all the other objects, I had to recreate the materials, which was fine, and I had to make some of them a bit more shiny, darken some of them, kind of just touch them up and stuff, which took a little bit, but it was worth it. So I then finally placed them around, and I think it gives this area a lot of character. It kind of gives it a bit more detail. I also placed 3 mini kits, kind of like secret little mini kits that you have to get to. There's one that's kind of hard to get to at the top, and I added some like lights to the little, I guess, light part of the mini kit. I think it looks pretty cool. The effects make it look even cooler. But yeah, this is pretty much my final design of this location. I think the most striking stylistic choice about LEGO games are the contrast between the realistic elements and the plastic playful elements. It just gives it such a unique charm. There are some really great examples of worlds that are entirely LEGO, like there is that one LEGO game where you can build, what is that called, LEGO Worlds or something. Why did that fall off? That was like really cool. And then there's like the LEGO Movie where pretty much everything is made out of Legos, and that has like a story reason, but that looks great too. But I also think like the games, of course, they just can't be making everything out of Lego. That would take too long. I don't necessarily think it's bad. I think it looks interesting and unique, and it's kind of like, this is not an aesthetic that any other game can have. You're not going to find any other game where you have this really realistic environment with like HD textures, and then you have these like plastic objects that look otherworldly. It is just such a unique game because it's based off of Lego. The atmosphere of Lego Batman is probably why I love it so much. I'm not like a huge Lego person. I haven't had that many sets in my life. I didn't play with them that much as a kid. Lego games were kind of like my main experience with Lego. I also love the design of the realistic elements inside of the Lego Batman games. Not just like the Lego part, but the actual like city design itself. It's really not afraid to go in a fantastical direction, which I've asked for all the time when it comes to Gotham City. And it takes tons of inspiration from the set design of Batman and Batman Returns, and even like the animated series and stuff. It really creates these fantastical otherworldly environments with these like machinery and stuff that just makes no sense. It's just everything's kind of like unrealistic, but it has these like realistic textures. Design wise, there can be something said about the strengths of Green Fingers over Poisonous Appointment. Green Fingers has a lot more variety in designs, and it feels more open-ended. You aren't in areas for too long in that level. On the other hand, Poisonous Appointment is a lot more claustrophobic, which could have been done on purpose, but it does keep you within areas a bit longer, making them kind of drag on. And I think the main culprit of this has to be Robin's attract suit, which kind of forces you to destroy everything in the area to look for these pieces. The villains don't have these suits, and so the designers couldn't fall back on simply making the puzzle collecting these little objects. Green Fingers had to play with a lot more platforming, exploring, and set pieces like the duck boat area. And so that level, because they don't have the suits, kind of forces developers to be a little bit more smart about like what is interesting about this, instead of just falling back on, hey, just collect these pieces. Like, we're just kind of wasting time by making you destroy all these objects to collect these pieces. It's honestly one of the worst mechanics in the game is the attract suit, and it just kind of makes areas drag on. It just forces you to destroy everything, which I know 100%ers like to do, but for me, just trying to get through the level and kind of enjoy the atmosphere, like having to destroy everything in a room to look for these pieces is just kind of boring. Green Fingers and Poisonous Appointment, to an extent, minus the criticisms I have, is probably one of my favorite levels in the game, if not my favorite. And I hope the little art piece I did, whatever you want to call it, like trophy, model, or something, I hope it reflects it in some way and pays homage to it. I know that it has taught me many things about Substance. With my little experience with Substance, this was like a great exercise to kind of figure out how the process from Blender to Substance works. And I figured out that the process in this video has a lot more caveats to it than I realized, and I don't know if I'll do it again. We'll see. Anyways, that is Levelism Episode 2. I hope you enjoyed it. I spent lots of time, I spent so long on this in between schoolwork, just spending hours and hours working on this. It took a lot longer than expected. I really was not meaning to make a model this kind of... I didn't mean to make it this big, honestly. I was just hoping to make a little trophy, and I kind of got carried away and made this whole freaking building. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed it, and if you have any suggestions for stuff in the future, please let me know in the comments below. I'm probably going to cover Lego Batman 2 and even Lego Batman 3, so look forward to that. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.